Hello, everybody. Welcome to
Hey,
Fighting Friends.
hi.
How goes
Thank-
it?
Hello.
Goes well.
That is marvelous to hear because it was a crazy week and a fairly stressful weekend.
Oh.
So, you know, it's good. It's good that this week is a little bit calmer so far. Going a little bit good. How about you, Reed? Is your week going to be calm this week?
Well, I worked on Easter Sunday for 11 and a half hours and then got up at 6 this morning and worked till 8:30. Or 8. So, yeah, I don't know. You can judge that however you want.
That's fair. I was actually kind of like giving you an opening to self-brag about how great your week actually was going to be, but all right. I'll do it for you. Reed's going on Part of the
Okay.
Problem on Wednesday with Dave Smith, and it's going to be awesome. So Reed's going to have a very busy week because he's going to get an extra like 5,000 followers on Twitter this week or something, hopefully. Fingers crossed.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that. That's going to be great. And I really do owe quite a bit to Dave as far as my rise in publicity goes. So I really appreciate him having me on the show. That's nice of him.
Mhm.
So
Nice.
Yeah, Dave
Congrats.
turned out to be a good guy.
yeah, he's a connection you can't buy too. Like a lot of people. I mean, I think it's important to appreciate the situation. You know, like he is kind of the guy to be friends with, and it all happened organically. It's definitely not like we were trying to be friends. Like it was almost we were trying to just be like, hey, everyone, cut it out, and then it organically materialized. So it was great.
Nice.
Yeah, I definitely was not expecting how receptive he was to like coming onto your show. The fact that he literally threw out him coming onto my show himself, like he's been constantly like tagging us and Jeremy in everything that he posts about Liberty Unity, shouting us out on Tom Woods and his own show and like everywhere else he goes. It's been really awesome. And like when we first started this, a lot of people were telling me that he was playing me, that he was completely insincere, that he was just using us to legitimize himself because we were backing him up, which, you know, I'm gonna be honest, like was in the back of my mind, right? Like I'm like that's definitely a possibility, right? That he's doing that, but I'm gonna give him the benefit of the doubt. And I'm glad I did because we were right and all of those people were wrong. Like,
Yeah. I mean, he's becoming the Liberty Uniter more than me now, you know, like, which is what we want. Like, we want someone with his status to be doing that. So that's great. If I'm
right.
passing the torch up to him, I guess you would say. So
Yeah. All right. So the topic of the day, on the merits of anarchy. So I want to start this out by asking Stacia, what you think anarchy, like what your opinion of anarchy is currently going into this conversation.
I mean, I don't really know much about it. I don't think I have any other anarchist friends. So, I mean, I'm mostly hoping to find out what it is before I judge it. I guess if I have an opinion, it's that it seems unrealistic. Like it seems like it is that we should have no government, as far as I can tell, you know, from the word. And that seems unrealistic to me. But we'll see. Yeah.
Okay. The basic definition is a stateless society.
I see.
So you're right there for sure. So I don't necessarily know that I would actually identify myself as an anarchist yet. but I definitely see the merits of anarchy to play off of my own title. So this is going to be kind of interesting because I feel like I'm going to end up playing middleman, especially once Magnus joins in for the second hour. Because he's further than Reed, so that's going to be.
Oh, I see.
Should be a fun time.
I kind of wanted to, like, so that it's not, starting off confrontational or anything, just kind of establish that I think we all agree that we want, like, freedom, right? Mm-hmm. We want a free society, and it's just a question of what that looks like. Like, what would the most free society, that's just and people are able to pursue happiness and have opportunity, like, what would that look like? What structure would best achieve that? And so I feel like I'd love to approach this with kind of like looking for that answer together and, like exploring how anarchy might fit that. And then looking for if there are potential pitfalls or, Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah. I think that, every political philosophy has problems, whether that's communism or capitalism or anarchy or libertarianism or whatever. I don't think that there's necessarily a perfect answer. I don't think that there is really a freest, or there's a freest society, but I'm hesitant in believing that there is a like completely free society.
I agree. Yeah.
But so there's actually a comment in the comment section already, which is a pretty good point, that there is a difference between the state and governance of some sort. So
what is the
when
difference?
So I actually had this conversation the other day. I was arguing with an anarchist who was trying to tell me that I was a statist for being a libertarian, and not an anarchist. And like there's an option for a consensual governance, right? The state normally assumes force, like the term is a non-consensual, like you got born into it and now you're here. Like you didn't agree to be an American and to live under all these rules. You just are stuck here. So yeah, when we talk about like an anarchist system in the future, we're not talking like the absence of like any kind of rules or order or anything. It's just the absence of a state that has a monopoly on violence and rules and order with no consent or really oversight at this point.
Well, that's interesting. I'd like to hear more about that. So what is anarchy to you guys? Can I ask that? Or
go ahead, Reed.
Sure. So I'll just say that I think that people will naturally form some sort of government no matter what. The goal is to have as little as possible, and the ideal is none. So my ideal used to be the Constitution, and that changed. Now my ideal is no government. And like David said, I don't think idealism is a realistic way to think about anything. But, or let me put it this way. I don't think utopia exists. So even if we achieved anarchy, I don't think everything would work out perfectly. I think that with the absence of the state, the responsibility on the individual increases to be a productive member of society and to be peaceful and be cooperative, all those types of things. I think it depends on an educated and willing public to get along, I think, but I don't think the state solves any of the problems that we think it does. Like, I don't think the state really does keep order. If you look at all the police brutality over the last year, if you look at the worldwide murder the state has committed, what the state really does is it just pushes it off one level so that it's not necessarily right in front of our faces all the time. So, you know, a lot of people say if we didn't have government, we'd have warlords running the country. We do have warlords running the country. They just push it, you know, they push it off one level to worldwide conflicts instead of us necessarily seeing it here at home. But I think that you will still have conflicts with anarchy. If the entire country of the United States embraced anarchy somehow, I think you would still have conflicts, but it would end up being more like the Native Americans before we were here. Every giant war or genocide or brutality that's been forced upon people has been facilitated by a government, by a strong government. In places where there hasn't been a strong government, you know, there's conflicts and people kill each other, but not nearly on the scale that they do when you have governments like communist China or Nazi Germany, fascist Italy, fascist United States. You don't see the same scale of murder. So I think that it's not so much that anarchy is the answer to all of our problems. It's that the state is the answer to none of our problems. It doesn't achieve anything that we think it does. So we should be striving for different solutions than government to fix our problems, because I just don't believe it actually fixes anything, if that makes sense. So it's not the idea of, oh, we're going to embrace anarchy and everything will be fine, all our problems will go away. It's the idea government is not fixing any of our problems. Government is force. Government is violence. Government is evil. Let's stop pretending that government is going to fix these issues. Let's look for other solutions.
Okay. And David, do you want to talk about what anarchy is to you?
Yeah, so I'll avoid answering that question fully, just because at risk of just saying exactly everything that Reed just said, because
Okay.
I'm pretty with him, but I'll tack on just an example of what he's talking about from just today. I was in a policy meeting earlier today and we were talking about daycares and why there aren't any like affordable daycares in New York City, right? So we discuss occupational licensing, the fact that there are thousands of dollars worth of and months worth of hoops that you have to jump through in New York City to open a daycare, and they will literally arrest you for babysitting kids for money without, like, on a daily basis without having these licensing. So and so we agree that these occupational licensings are causing a problem. We go to move on with the conversation, and somebody brings up, well, we have to make sure that we're keeping these kids safe. So we have to be able to make sure that these people aren't like criminals or rapists or abusers or anything like that, that these kids are going to be safe. So we need something, right, to make from the government to make sure that that's a thing. No, because in the process of looking for the story of the couple that got arrested for having an illegal daycare, I instead found dozens and dozens of stories of people in New York City getting arrested for raping and abusing small children in New York City at licensed daycares. These people have all the licenses, they have all the credentials, they passed all the tests, they jumped through all the hoops. They're still raping 3-year-olds. So the government didn't solve that problem. All they did was make sure that the peaceful people that wanted to also babysit kids couldn't.
Okay. Why do you think not having requirements to open a daycare would make it better?
Because then people that wanted to open a daycare could just open a daycare and not have to spend, again, thousands of dollars and months worth of paperwork to get the government's thumbs up to be able to make $5. It's the same with almost any industry, whether you want to talk about, like in New York State, you actually need a dog walker's license. That's a thing we have here. So you, like, especially in New York City, which is where this campaign is, it is impossible really to make money without already spending thousands and thousands of dollars to get a license to be able to make that money. Whether you're trying to feed your neighbors or watch their kids or cut their hair or walk their dogs, you can go to jail for doing any of those things.
I see. Cool. Nice. So, some thoughts. I have this theory that anarchism and maybe libertarianism is almost like a trauma response to the US specifically, because a lot of the things, like there are problems everywhere, right? But like the police brutality thing, that's just a US problem, right? Like
No,
No.
not even a little bit.
Have you seen the news this week?
Yeah.
No, but like, have you looked at the statistics of, it's like every country is like maybe like 5 murders or, you know, like very, very minimal police brutality.
Oh yeah,
like,
it's definitely
murders.
worse
And then
here, but it's
the
still a
US
problem
is like,
everywhere.
woo! Is it?
Oh yeah.
It's
I mean,
worse here, yeah.
I could show you.
It's
you know,
worse
just
here, but I mean, if you look at the, yeah,
I don't think that's true. We
Sorry,
can look
I
at
think
those
there's
did you
statistics
see the
lag
videos
here.
of them like
later,
stampeding
but
crowds with horses? Was that in Brussels or?
Yeah, you've got people on
Oh,
horseback just beating people over the head with batons in Brussels. You have UK cops releasing dogs on people who are just attacking them. You have people ramming other people with bikes and motorcycles and cars in I think that one was in Germany. You've got I mean, if anybody was watching the Yellow Vest protests from France in like 2018, 2019, those people were getting the shit beat out of them too, left and right. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely so. Like, police brutality is definitely worse here than most places. But to the state having a monopoly on violence and being able to use it whenever it feels like it is still killing people, no matter what country you're in. And again, like, yeah, we especially Brussels and the UK, those are the two biggest examples. And I'll give some context, especially the ones in UK. The reason that they're protesting, the protests that they're breaking up are a protest against a law that would make protesting illegal. So they're trying to outlaw protesting in the UK right now, and the people that are protesting that are getting literally eaten by police dogs every day.
wow.
So yeah, police brutality is bad no matter what country you're in.
Okay, so we can cherry pick some examples, right? Sure. So you guys are saying that we don't need any force to enforce the peace?
We don't need an entity with a monopoly on violence and enforcing and keeping the peace.
Okay, so we should all have guns and defend ourselves?
I mean, that's one option.
Okay, I don't
The
think
other
that's going to
option-
work for single moms and the, you know, old people.
Yes.
And like,
Yes. but,
Actually,
I mean,
everybody owning a gun is the only thing that works for single moms and old people, comparatively. If you disarm everyone, it's the single moms and the old people that are fucked. Because I can do some damage to some single moms and some old people unarmed, just me, myself. You give them a gun and me a gun, now we're equal.
Are there not statistics that say having a gun often backfires on the person? Is that wrong? I don't know. I haven't looked into it myself, but I've heard that there are statistics that say that.
I haven't seen any.
Okay, we can look at it.
I've definitely
Yeah.
seen the statistics of how often someone
backfire
carrying a
on the
firearm, the person trying to like harm them. Yeah, there are non-violent what's the word? Discouragement, I guess, of crime in the thousands, like tens of thousands every year. because someone was armed, and
Okay.
the perpetrator did not complete the crime that they were attempting to complete, just by sight of gun. No shots, no nothing.
So in this society, we should all. Yeah, go ahead. Were you going to say something?
Sorry, just there's like a 5-second lag, so if I start saying something, then there's overlap. But yeah, I was gonna say, a lot of people don't like the idea of a privatized police force, because then you could have the police only answering to powerful people and not helping out in poor neighborhoods. That's what we already have, and it's sanctioned by the state, and there's no competition at all. The cops are incredibly unreliable. They don't show up on time. They don't help out a lot of poor neighborhoods. They actually cause problems in a lot of poor neighborhoods. They're incredibly violent. There's no oversight at all. You can't fire them. Like if if you're a guy who needs help and you want to call the police, you have the state police or the town police or whatever. That's the only option you have. You can't choose from competing forces at all. And there's no way to get rid of bad cops because they're protected by the state.
I agree.
So
we
all
should
the
have a
fears
way
that we have
to get rid of bad cops.
If we had privatized police, they already exist, and they're codified by law and protected by abuse policies. So.
Yeah, I agree. We should have ways to get rid of the bad cops for sure. Yeah. One concern with the privatized police force is if it's all like separate, separate businesses. Sorry, what? I wasn't sure if you were going to say something. So if they're all like separate forces, I don't know if they would communicate efficiently. I mean, maybe we could set up a system for that, but there's a concern of like the criminals could like go somewhere else, right? Like they could just move to a different town and be like, it would be hard to track criminals like across state borders and across towns, right? They could just, I mean, yeah.
Yeah. So I'm gonna I actually completely agree with you. That's one of the concerns that I had originally too, until I got to witness in a very good way for me, how bad we already are at that. Because I have a suspended license in New York State, but the other 49 states don't know that. And I can get pulled over in Pennsylvania, and it'll show that there's like something there when they run my license, but they can't tell that it's a suspension and that they should be arresting me and taking my license in my car. All they can tell is that the New York cops said something about me on my driving record somewhere. They can't tell if it's resolved. They can't tell if it's an open case. They have no idea. But I definitely agree. Like that's a cherry picked kind of thing, because that has to do with like suspensions almost specifically. But there are other ways where we're bad at that communication. But on top of that, I think that we as a society right now already have plenty of ways for private companies to really work well together. And yeah, I think that it would not be very difficult to create that system where they're communicating.
It also makes me really nervous. I see the influence of private companies in our government as being one of the main problems with our government. Like the power of social media to control the narrative, the power of the media, which was bought up by private companies to control the narrative, the influence of private companies on our legislative bodies. Like, in my mind, we need to get the private companies out of the government. And so that, like, I don't get why just making them the government would be the answer, if that makes sense.
No one's trying to make them the government.
Well, but you would be giving the roles of the government to them, right? Like, enforcing the peace and stuff like that.
So the fear is that, all these, like the social media companies, they have so much power because they have a monopoly. These corporations that have tons of power, they have monopolies on all these resources. So government is a monopoly. Like, that's what a lot of people don't understand. Government has a guaranteed income, it has zero competition, and it doesn't need to improve itself at all. So the fear that a private company is going to be as bad as the government is kind of a false. I don't understand that fear, I guess, because the government already has a profit incentive.
But the
a lot of
motive
people
is
act
different.
like a lot of people mistakenly say that government doesn't have a profit incentive. It totally does. I mean, it just doesn't have a waste cutting incentive. They can just raise how much their income is every year. But like the idea of private prisons being bad because they're for profit, only 8% of prisons are private in the United States, and public prisons are certainly profit driven prisons. The government makes money off of taxpayers, that makes money off of the people. So the idea that the government isn't a for-profit system already is false. It is a for-profit system. It just has zero competition. It doesn't have to worry about waste. It doesn't have to worry about doing a good job. It doesn't have to worry about being inconsiderate or crushing people because they get away with it, where private companies would lose business if they were doing a bad job. They wouldn't get hired again if they don't have a monopoly. So, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I'd tag on because you brought up the social media companies, which is a great example. But I think it's also a great example of what Reed's saying, because we're seeing people leaving Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram in droves. They've lost millions of users in the last year, which is something you can't do with government monopoly, right? You can't just leave the police department because they were doing bad things. So even though Facebook has a monopoly still, they don't have a good competitor, you still have an opt-out button. You have a delete account button where you don't have to participate in their bullshit if you don't want to, which is something that we just don't have. And on top of that, I think one of the other important pieces of what you're talking about, because when you say giving the roles of government to private companies, we're talking about giving individual roles of government from all over the place to a bunch of different companies in different industries, and breaking what is now currently a monolith into probably hundreds of thousands of small businesses. So even if like a small business, or even if like worst case scenario, like we were talking the other day, Stacia, about like Jeff Bezos like owning the National Police Department, right? He would still only own the National Police Department. He wouldn't also own the fire department and the EMS and the people that write the laws and the people that prosecute his own police or his own security detail, and he wouldn't own everything that the federal government currently does. He would have one tiny sliver of their power. And that's even in the completely impossible hypothetical where Jeff Bezos actually somehow monopolizes the police, because he wasn't even able to put FedEx, UPS, and the Postal Service out of business with Amazon. So I highly doubt that he would be able to actually put every other small security firm across the country out of business and actually have every town in America continue to subscribe to his service, regardless of how cost effective it was.
So who hires the private security forces?
You.
Individuals.
Mm-hmm.
Oh wow.
Well, I would say that's a question for the people that that are making that decision. Like, that's one of the beauties of anarchy, is that we don't have to come up with that answer necessarily, because my town might come together and say that they still want to be a town. Like, if we abolish the federal government, abolish the state governments, right? In this hypothetical, my town could still say, hey, we were okay with what we were. We're going to keep our mayor and our city council because that was cool, and they were good people. And that mayor and city council would then be able to have that power. But it's not connected to, again, everything, like all of the other branches of everything, making it this omnipotent evil. But yeah, I mean, that's one of those fun questions where it's like, the people get to make that decision for themselves all over the country. We could have a million different answers to that question, because there's a different group of 350 people that made a different decision.
Okay. So, what about, for example, my town? It's kind of like a medium suburban town. So I know there's a culture war going on, right? And so even in our town's Facebook group, sometimes there's some conflict there. So how would that work with my town and all across the US? There's a lot of like disagreements going on, even amongst neighbors. So how do we agree, if people who hate each other and are living together in a town, how would they all separately have their own forces, and maybe some decide, I'm just gonna protect myself, and you came on my land, I think. Although there would be private land, right? So we have private land, and so but no public land, right? So homeless people, where would homeless people live?
Where do homeless people currently live?
On the streets and on the public land.
Kind of.
Yeah, they do.
Not by not legally.
Sure. Okay. But that's especially in big cities, right? In big cities, they tend to have laws against homeless people, but technically there's a lot of space that is public that homeless people can go to, and there's the wilderness also. I don't know I don't know. I know there are homeless people near my house that live in a parking lot that has like a structure set up that has a shower and stuff. And anyway, so like where do the homeless people go if we're selling all the land to private owners?
So I think you could still have like communally owned land. It just wouldn't be owned by a government that you wouldn't have consent whether or not you're paying for it. So if you guys live in a neighborhood and you want to have a public beach or a public park or something that you all choose to donate money to, that's cool, but it wouldn't be a statewide tax that's, a certain percentage is taken out of everybody's pay and then it's put into, arbitrary services. Like, you would be able to choose which services your money is going toward, and then you'd be able to use that communal piece of land or whatever it is. So the idea that a person has to own every single thing, I don't think would be true under anarchy. You could still have things that everybody pays for to use.
And you think everybody would be like, all the homeless people can live on our small plot of public land? Like, it seems very wishful thinking that we would hope that all the homeless people, someone would just be like, I'll take care of y'all. Because they're not doing that now, right? Like, they could do that now. There's nothing stopping.
No, they can't.
Yes,
there is.
It's
called the state. Yeah.
Yeah.
You can't feed homeless people without a permit, bro.
No, but
you can't house homeless people without a permit.
What?
You can't help homeless people without the state saying you can.
You can't.
Have you not seen the videos of people
I
pouring
didn't know
bleach on food that they were serving to the cops pouring bleach on food that they were serving to homeless people? That was in your state, honey. That was your people. Yeah, no, the police will come and shut down any unsanctioned help to the homeless people because they have a monopoly on both violence and assistance. They don't want private companies or private people to help the homeless, and they will stop them with force.
Okay, but a lot do. I mean, I've been to Skid Row and I've visited, there's a number of homeless shelters, there's a number of food banks. Like, I've volunteered at one, I've
Yeah.
worked at one.
Right.
So
You're kind of answering your own question there, though, aren't you? Because you said people currently don't help homeless people.
No, they do, but it's not enough people, right? It's too many homeless people.
Right.
There's not enough help. That's why
The
Right.
thing is,
My point is,
we're not saying that this solves all the problems. We're just saying that the state is not solving the problem right now, and it's a violent, ineffective way to try to solve it. So it's not that getting rid of the state gets rid of homelessness. It's that the state does not get rid of homelessness, and it also punishes you in a lot of ways for trying to help homeless people. So, I mean,
I think we agree on the problems, but it seems like your solution is just throw out the whole thing and it'll be better. And I'm saying, why don't we fix the thing? And because there are countries that have really nice prisons, and there are countries that have great police forces. Like Japan, the police are awesome. Like, I've had so many positive experiences with them. And Japan is super safe. So yeah, just yeah, if that makes sense. Yeah, like, it seems like you guys can find an example, and so you're like, so throw it all out. So why don't we just fix the specific problems that we're identifying? I know it's a lot, right? It's a big task to take on, but I don't see how it's any less of a task than throwing the whole thing out, like, and starting over.
You go first, David.
Yeah, I'll take this one because I was where you are right now for 5 years, right? I've been a libertarian for almost 6 now. Actually, it has been 6. Shit, wow. This is a fun time. But so I was exactly where you are right now for those entire 6 years. Like, we got to elect some libertarians, and then we got to elect some people with some common sense, and then we can fix it. So I fully understand like everything you're saying.
I don't think we just need to elect some people. Just throwing that out there.
Yeah, that's not it. But like, okay, that was my thought process, right? Like, we can fix it. We can like elect the right people and change the laws and do the things and be better people, and we can fix it under the state. What I have come to realize over the last year or so is first of all how unsuccessful that is, right? And which, I mean, obviously the three of us have had a number of conversations about just how impossible it is to actually penetrate the elective system or the legislative system in any way. But on top of that, kind of what Reed's pointing at is that every time the state tries to solve a problem, they end up making it worse.
But you don't know what it would be like without them. I feel like you're discounting all the things that they do right. I mean, America has super comfortable lives. Like, we are so comfortable. And people come here from all over the world because of how comfortable it is and how you can rise. Like, there is a lot of opportunity, right, for people to make better lives for themselves, and we see a lot of that. So, I mean, I criticize our country a lot. Like, there is a lot that's wrong with it, but at the same time, looking at human history and then the rest of the world right now, it doesn't seem like a throw it all out and like it's all terrible. Kind of like,
so it's not throw out the country, it's the state. I mean, everything good about America.
But you're saying okay.
Everything good about America that you just described, like opportunity and everything, that originates from having a government that was not extremely involved in the economy. And that's getting less and less attractive all the time. And it's because the government has more and more to do with the economy. Funneling wealth straight to the top, screwing over people trying to start out. So everything good that attracts people to America has nothing to do with the state. So it's not getting rid of America. It's not even so it's not like electing people who are going to end the state, because you can't do that. Like that's that doesn't make any sense. It's about looking for solutions outside of just changing the government, just trying to get people to realize that the government is not what's going to solve your problems, and trying to get people to take care of each other, to to stop to give up on Congress to solve the problems, to try to use try to use market solutions and different ways to improve our lives and treat each other like humans, instead of asking the state to do that for us, because the state can't do that for us. The state can't improve our lives. They only make it worse, pretty much.
So okay, but again, like, to me, the problem is that private companies have become too powerful in the state. And
so, I mean, there's no way we can't get in there and nuke the government. Like, I don't see.
Sorry. So I thought that was the plan.
Because of the state.
Oh. Wait, what? Okay,
the state gives them their immunity, gives them their protections, gives them their power. It gives them power.
So are you talking about the state and the government as different things, and you're saying we need to get rid of the state, but we still need government?
Hold on. I'm going to cut in here. Hold on, Reed. Hold on.
So that there's no way that you can.
Oh, I can't hear you.
Okay. So to clarify, he was, because of the leg, he was answering your point about the companies being too powerful when he said because of the state, which was also my exact response. Yeah, the state is, and their protections and the lobbyists within the state are what has created most of those private company problems that you're talking about. These.
Sure, it's related. Yeah.
Without the state, like Amazon would not be what it is. It wouldn't have the monopoly that it has, because they wouldn't have had that ability to then go in and change laws to make sure that their competitors can never exist.
But like with Amazon, I mean, isn't what they do, they have their web hosting, and so then they make their money from that. I mean, we talked about this before, right? Like, companies find ways to screw each other, right? And people also. Like, I mean, right? So the companies are trying to find ways to screw people, to make the most profit with the least cost to them. And so the role of government should be to check them, right? And I mean, it's not now, but I don't see how having nothing to check them helps. Like, wouldn't Amazon still do what it's doing? It would find, like, it has this other way to make money, so it can undercut businesses, and then drive them out of business, and then take over. And
that would be a possibility still. Yes. Again, anarchy doesn't solve all of the problems, like Reed said.
Then you have,
but the thing is, you wouldn't, like, it would have been a lot harder. Like it possibly, to answer your question, like hypothetically possibly, but not necessarily.
Okay. What about healthcare? Like, right now I'm studying the healthcare industry, and it seems like healthcare is somewhere where people are vulnerable, right? Like they're
Yeah,
being.
the other thing is without, I mean, you have market forces to keep.
Market forces to keep it cut out.
Man, this. Keep going, Reed.
Yeah, keep going. We can. I just heard market forces to keep, and then it cut out. Again.
Man, this lag is awful.
Hey, Dave, I've literally got like a 15-second delay, so maybe I should log out.
Yeah, that sounds like a good plan. All right, we're gonna hopefully when Reed comes back, he'll be better off because that lag got so much worse.
Yeah, I just couldn't hear him at all.
Because he kept stopping talking because you were talking, and then you stopped talking. You were talking, and it was just all sorts of awful. But let's see if this is better. Can you hear us now in real time? Right. Good sir.
Hello.
I think so. Can you hear me in real time?
Yeah.
Right now, yeah.
Sort of. All right. I'm like 3 seconds behind you, but that's better than 20 or whatever that was. Yeah. So, healthcare is actually the greatest example of cronyism that we deal with today, because competition is literally illegal. Mm-hmm. That's why EpiPens cost $800 here, but you can buy them for $10 or whatever in Mexico. Dan Berman.
Yeah.
What did he bring across the border? I forget.
Insulin.
Insulin.
Yeah.
He brought a ton of insulin across the border and was selling it for the same price, which was like an 85% sale from what you'd have to buy it for here.
Yeah.
So like that, I mean, that's just a perfect example of government fascism that we have here. Why everything's
in the
so
US,
expensive, why it sucks.
But
and go ahead.
Well, in other countries, it doesn't cost that much, right? They're spending like half as much as us on healthcare, even the most expensive, wealthiest countries. And it looks like it's, at least what I've read, is that it's because their governments say, this is how much you can charge our people for this medicine, and they don't let them just mark it up as much as they want. But in the US, we have patents that originally, like, it's a really cool idea to have patents, right? Because then it rewards people for innovation. But the problem is that they've, changed things and made it so that they can make patent thickets, or just change something small and renew the patent. And so, but there are ideas for patent, what's it called? Like remaking it into a modern system that would actually work for us. Like, there are ideas for how to do it that in ways that it would reward people for innovation, but also, protect people from the ongoing patents that never end. So again, I just don't know that it's something we throw it out. And like, there are so many examples that I'm coming across of places where the government is like trying to keep up with things, like the surprise billing. So companies can, so for example, in a hospital, there can be a doctor who's not in network, especially in emergency rooms, so they're not in network, but they can, it can be an in-network hospital. And then this doctor can treat you and not tell you they're not in network. And then you can get a bill from them, and you have to pay it all. Like, your insurance won't necessarily cover it because it's out of network. And so there's a lot of, over 50% of Americans have had surprise bills that they thought were covered by insurance. And so Congress just passed in the omnibus spending bill in December, they passed something to protect people from that. And another example is the what is it? Pre-existing conditions, right? So with the business model of insurance companies, it makes sense for them not to take on people with pre-existing conditions or to charge them more for insurance. And the government was like, no, you can't do that. You have to, and so like there are a number of examples I'm coming across, both of the government doing things that, aren't ideal, but mostly it seems like they're trying to keep up with the problems that are happening. And then also they've been blocked numerous times by the American Medical Association. Like since the 1930s, they've been trying to pass some kind of universal healthcare. And the American Medical Association is like, nope, and does all this propaganda that it's like socialism. And so they shoot it down,
Yeah, so the corporate profiteering wouldn't be possible without the government. Like, I mean, if you can't, because you have to have a product that you'd be able to sell. The only reason you're able to sell it at such bloated prices is because there's no competition. So look at it with anything else. If you wanted to sell shoes for $900 a pair, nobody would buy them because they could just go buy other shoes somewhere else. So what you do is you lobby, which is what these health insurance companies and what these pharmaceutical companies do, and you make it impossible to get the same product for less of a price or for other people to be able to compete with you. And then you have, then you can sell shoes for $900. But the other thing, the other thing I was going to say is, if the state is, if that is a win that we got, that piece of legislation, you got to look at the rest of the bill that passed. That omnibus bill was terrible. So that's my point. Like that, if this is how we're winning with the state, we're losing more than we're winning. That omnibus bill was way worse than it was good. I mean, it was 90% bad, 10% good, maybe.
Yeah.
So if that's success, then I'm not interested.
But I want to, like, I agree that we need to fix things, but then I'm just not seeing again, we agree on the problems, but then the solutions, like, I'm not seeing how anarchy presents a better option, right? It's just like, we haven't tried it yet. It probably would work to just get rid of the whole, like, throw out the whole bad thing and, start over with something we haven't tried yet.
So we can't just get rid of the government, right? Like we can't do it. It's impossible. Okay. We can't get the votes to get people in who would want to destroy the government. So the whole purpose of anarchists now is to try to make a better life outside of trying to change the government. So mutual aid, helping each other out in whatever way you can.
I'm sorry, Magnus is in the green room dabbing, so I'm cracking up.
When's he coming in? How much longer has he got?
Yeah, I was just about to play our little mid-show thing and give a little speech as soon as you were done with your.
Just finish up my thing. Like,
yeah.
Anarchy right now is not about, like, I mean, sure, vote for people who want to decrease the power of the state, but we don't think that we're just going to randomly get all the people in there who are going to hit the Rothbard button and get rid of it. It's more about living a life that shows that we can take care of each other without the state and encouraging people to care about one another. That's more what the message of anarchy is at this point in time.
Okay, well, I agree with all of that. I agree with decreasing the state and making it more localized, so less power and more local power. I agree with, we should be taking care of each other more and, have more of a, and I think that works on a small scale. I have another big question to bring up, but maybe we can talk about it with Magnus.
All right. Yeah. So, guys, thank you so much for watching so far. It's been a fun time. If you want to support the channel, please do so. There's a Cash App, Fight for Liberty. Please like this video, share it, subscribe to the channel because we do this every single week and it's super fun. New guest every time. So definitely subscribe and come back next week. But right now, we are going to play a quick word from our sponsors and we'll be right back.
We have
I
sponsors?
think it says so much that the concern about anarchism is that it could devolve back into something like government, right? Like, oh no, we can't have freedom because we might end up with the system we have now.
We have been waiting for the Hail Mary pitch of the national media just deciding to give us a bunch of attention and let us on the debate stage, and then we get to catapult to the White House. It's not going to happen.
And we say things like, what all Americans want is freedom. That's not true. We made that up. That's absolutely not true.
We need to agree on this one thing, and we need to go in there and hand these politicians their asses and say, you're done, we're in, and we're dismantling this money system, and we're going to bring the government back to the American people. And then once we give it back to the American people, guess what? The American people are going to decide what kind of society they want to live in.
Because the left started World War I, World War II, the Korean War, and Vietnam. Those are all started by Democrats. Vietnam is only because they didn't want to go, because there was a draft.
You're Luke Skywalker, man. Tell me something important. Teach me something that matters that I don't know, or show me you're leading somebody else. And especially, I'm sorry, but we're the Empire killing the Sand People here and shit. This is so obvious, Luke.
They tried to get people canceled back then. They got some people canceled, but it was mostly politicians. It was mostly people in power. And when you play a power game, when you decide you're going to be a Machiavellian, you're expect to get your throat slit at some point, metaphorically. And so no, this is completely different. This is going after regular people.
As long as people look at other people as people, and we can remember and think about our humanity and our individualism, then I think that people are inherently good. And I think it takes outside forces to otherize people.
Why are we here? Why are we here? Because we care about these real issues, because these are real human beings who are suffering, whose lives are being ruined. Let's try to come together and brush some of this stuff off and deal with these really important issues. Because all this other stuff is like symptoms. It's symptoms of the central problem. And unless you solve the central problem, then we'll be fighting over Mr. Potato Head forever.
Man, I fucking love that video, dude. Every time. It's
stuff.
Great. All right, guys, welcome back. This is Fightin' Friends. Tonight we have a super awesome guest for our second hour. He has broken Twitter 3 times now. 3 separate occurrences of just fucking up Twitter and turning it to a hellhole. Infamous boog boy, Magnus Panvidya. Welcome to the show.
Hi, guys. I'm having a lot of fun shit posting in the chat.
I saw that. That was great.
Yeah.
How are you doing, bro?
It's funny. I was retweeted by actual Lucifer and broke the internet. It was great.
Right. Dude, when I got retweeted by Lucifer, I was ecstatic. I actually posted on Facebook about it. I was like, yo, when you get backed up on Twitter by the actual devil, this is lit.
So fucking good. So how many Michael Malice quotes have I missed? How many I have to avoid dropping? Because I'm
honestly, I don't watch him enough to comment or to
I
him.
have a fucking library in my head of Michael Malice quotes because he has the best anarchy zingers of all time. It's great.
Yeah, this is a little bit unfair to her. We get to plan a little bit while she's gone.
Right, especially me, because I've lived a lot of this shit. I've done it. I've gone to these places.
Right. Yeah, I definitely I still wish that you were here. What was that 3 weeks ago where we did the Antifa episode, because that was super fun. Would have loved to have had you in on that conversation.
It would have been even better, especially now that I was got to run around with people from John Brown Gun Club and talk to them and shit, and these fucking cool people, dude. Like, these are cool people. I have no complaints whatsoever. I think everyone in this chat would perfectly get along with every fucking person I hung out with. Like, hell yeah.
Facts. Yeah, but to be fair, I sent you a tweet the other day from our guest from that episode, who's kind of come around on the topic a little bit, ever so slightly. He's getting there, but it's better.
Yeah, little steps,
baby steps. Stacia's back in the game.
Sorry, I'm just catching up on the chat.
Oh boy, I was having fun.
Yeah, it's always a good time.
I love how much my hoodie like freaks my camera out. It's great. It makes me seem like I'm like living radio static, which is on brand for me.
That's fair. That's pretty accurate.
I know, it was so sad because that event I've been posting about. When we talked to the family of the person who died, they're like, we don't want any Hawaiian, we don't want any like BLM fists or anything, like non-political. So like we're like, okay, we'll go in all black. And then I was like, well, I don't own like clothes. So like I just like went like this. So like everyone's all cool looking like all black, like they're from like some military from a sci-fi movie, and then there's me in my blue jeans with this hoodie.
I saw that picture today.
Yeah.
I wanted to send that picture to Griffin because of, I mean, you specifically referenced Black Bloc in the post, and I was like, really, Black Bloc is always bad, huh?
No, Black Bloc's awesome. I know someone else in Ann Arbor, when they went out and did a separate event, was like screaming all over Twitter, like, why are they covering their face? They're covering their face because they're criminals. And then somebody went through their tweets, and it's all them complaining about people not wearing masks for COVID. It's like, shut up. Yeah.
Life is fun. All right, so Magnus, you've been listening in so far, or at least a chunk of it.
I call it the last like 15 minutes.
Okay. So I really want you to start off. Oh man, Griffin's watching. Shit. I wasn't sure if he was. He said I've accepted my bias. So Magnus, I want you to talk a little bit, if you could explain the concept of agorism as it compares to anarchy, because I don't actually know that point nearly as well as I wish I did.
Okay, so agorism, it's kind of split into two schools of thought. There is like actual like post-revolution agorism, which is a little more left-wing, a little more like syndicalist and everything. But then there is revolutionary agorism, which is based on the concept of counter-economics. And we actually do a lot of counter-economics already. Like Bitcoin is counter-economics. It's sidestepping the government and like not fighting the government, but just removing yourself from it as much as humanly possible to cause it to collapse. So Bitcoin is that, mutual aid is that, like not paying taxes, garage sales are agorism. Like anything that you're doing where you're taking goods, products, resources, and consent away from the government and just doing your own thing is agorism. And that's like what I promote more than anything, because it may or may not have gotten brought up, but a lot of instances of like aggressive revolutionary anarchy have not gone very well because conflict is messy and it usually leads to totalitarianism just because it's conflict, to where I've always shilled agorism as a way of kind of just like starving the government and just removing yourself from the government, and that makes them fall apart. But agorism was started as a kind of like a pacifist version of anarchy, to where it's kind of updated into more of a defensive one, because obviously there's no way that you could just stop paying taxes and like, go buy some property and like build like a commune or something, and the government isn't going to come fuck with you. And that's where like, the guns come in. But yeah, that's always been like my version of anarchism that I've kind of, attached myself to.
Awesome. Yeah, I was hoping you would say it similarly, because we were discussing, Reed brought up that we can't just like elect Adam Kokesh to push the Rothbard button, because Adam Kokesh is never going to be president, right? So Stacia kind of asked him the question of how do we do it, and I was like, I'm just going to wait and let Magnus answer that one with agorism.
Yeah, it's funny too, because like the actual like American Revolution, they don't teach this in schools, but it's actually a really important detail. way before anyone started shooting anybody, they practiced agorism. Like what they did and what a lot of people talked about is they stopped buying English goods and started producing them locally. They'd have secret elections where they would elect their own mayor, their own governor, and stuff like that outside of like the view of, you know, the English government. They would secure their own resources. They stopped paying taxes. They stopped paying tithes. And that was like what led up to the revolution. And there was actually the infamous Pine Tree Revolt, which if you ever see the Appeal to Heaven flags, that's what that was all about. And that was all started over a bunch of colonists were told not to cut down the American white pine and that it all belonged to the English. So they did it anyways. And then the English crown came and arrested a bunch of them. So they came and went and arrested the sheriff and lashed the sheriff one time for every tree that got stolen from the colonists, and then cut his ears off and sent him back to the English. So that was like I think like a year before the American Revolution even kicked off. So like we were already kind of, you know, there's foundations even in the United States for this kind of like, well, we'll just create our own government. And, you know, the Chaz and the Chop over in Seattle, like, say whatever you want about it. That's another example of people just being like, well, I'm not American anymore. We're going to do our own things. Don't come here. You're not welcome. So like that kind of idea isn't even really a outdated or like foreign concept to this country.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think because you touched on a very important topic there, because the biggest pushback I ever hear about anarchy is, and I think you actually got this in the Twitter thread we were in together the other day because you were talking about your tomatoes. So like everybody says, well, if you just want to like go live in the woods and fuck off, like you can do that already, right? But
not really. Yeah, not really.
And I think the story you just told, and yeah, it's an outdated one, but that's I think a good example of like even when you try to kind of do your own thing, the government will come in and try to fuck with you. I think Waco is another great example of that.
Ruby Ridge.
Thank you. I was spacing on that one, so I said Waco instead.
There was I forget exactly what tribe it was, but a lot of people don't talk about this. Of like the 60s, there was like an 81-day standoff with a Native American tribe and the federal government over like land rights, and you could see pictures of like Native American people with guns just like patrolling the reservation borders, like standing off against, you know, federal agents. Looked very similar to what happened with the Bundy Ranch kind of situation, which again, the Bundy Ranch situation, another perfect example of like you can't even just live, like they will find a way to get into your life somehow and try to send goons after you eventually.
I do want to point out we don't hear about all the people living in the wilderness who are just living peacefully and, you know, happy and it's fine and not, you know, we only hear about the horror stories, and it seems like there's usually another factor going on.
Actually, I hear about the people that are off living out in the wilderness happily quite often because I'm friends with a shit ton of them.
Yeah,
they still have to pay taxes. They still have been audited by the IRS. They've still been harassed by the cops. They've still,
especially if they have children. That's the big one, because they will go after them for like reckless endangerment of children or whatever, because they're not hooked up to city water or they're not putting them in public schools or anything. Like I see that all the time of like homesteading families that get arrested for child endangerment because, but the kids are, ironically enough, usually more well suited, more socialized, and better educated than like the city kids. But details, you know, and that's kind of my other like my huge argument for anarchism is just public education in general, because it's one of my issues I don't get to complain about enough.
Again, I think we really agree on the like the problems or like the things we would like to change. It's just very, I'm still not hearing why anarchism is the solution. There was something in the video, our sponsor's video,
our currently disconnected sponsor.
Yeah, I was like, oh, Reed is our sponsor. I know the sponsor. But it was saying like, I think it was Carrie or something. She was saying that we're concerned that anarchism will end up being just like the government. Actually, I'm concerned it will be way worse. So that's why I would rather like reform the government, even if we need to do some extreme reform.
My question is how, in what form exactly would it be worse if you contrast it with the few instances of anarchy we had, and contrast that with like the Soviet Union, like American foreign policy, like dropping nuclear weapons on Japan, like, you know, like that's what I like how much worse could it possibly be, would be my question in your opinion.
Well, this brings me to another big question that I had. How does foreign policy work, right? Because like there are a number of countries that their governments don't like us and are currently, you know, engaged in various, things against us, you know, and so how do we interact with other countries if we don't have a government, if we're all back in the not Stone Age, but
I just want to ask a clarification question first. What do you mean by doing things against us?
Well,
we do have antagonistic elements that don't like.
Yeah, I'm just curious exactly what she's referencing, just so I can process her answer.
I'm thinking mostly misinformation and propaganda. So like China and Russia and stuff, and probably a lot of other countries too, they use misinformation and propaganda to divide us. Like they're, at least my understanding is that they're doing this right now. I'm a big fan of the digital minister of Taiwan, who is like such a lover of democracy and has found democratic ways to address the misinformation and propaganda that China puts out, because they really go after Taiwan in that way. And so to me, the answer is democratic ways to address misinformation and, but our government just goes to authoritarianism. So I think that's bad, but there are other ways, right, that are being used. So I'm like, why don't we use those ways? But it is a real threat, right? So I don't feel like how do we address that threat?
I guess the two things I'd have to say about that is one, democracy can exist in anarchy. It's just as long as you have the ability to opt out of said democracy, as long as like you don't you're not forced to participate in it. You can still have, and there's tons like Bookchin. He's a communalist anarchist that's based on anarchy, and then obviously all of anarcho-communism and stuff is inherently democratic, to where more like what Reed is and stuff like that, like anarcho-capitalism is a little different, but there is democratic anarchy. But and then the other The other angle I'd put to that is China and these foreign powers have become so effective because of our centralization, because there's only like these, few very large news corporations that are backed with government money, because there's only these few mega, as we're on the internet right now, Google and stuff like that they can pin into in any time that opposition or like an alternative rises, the government legislates against them or destroys them. There's a lot of anti-deep web, anti-dark web kind of legislation a lot of people don't know about, which, decentralizing the net would be huge. And the government doesn't want that because, like, again, that centralization, it's a double-edged sword of like, it can be used in like a democratic way to kind of fight this stuff, but also it's inherently vulnerable to propaganda and attack. So it's like,
so I want also the other, I guess, question, because it's not really an answer. If we have an anarchic state with 600 different individual like organizational structures throughout the country, what is China going to misinform about? How are they going to divide a peaceful, happy country that doesn't have a government that they can lie about and turn us against?
Yeah, if they don't have any, I guess the answer, like, to rephrase the question, if they don't have any institutions to subvert, then what's the threat of them attempting to subvert the institutions?
Well, right now there's race things going on, right? People are being accused of racism, and other people, we're very, very divided by the culture war, right? And just our conceptions of reality, does male and female exist, or is it a spectrum? And these issues might seem silly, but then people are like really, really passionate about it and hate, their fellow Americans. I have a friend who posted the other day And she, sorry, she was saying that if we can't make everyone anti-racist, our only options are to do deprogramming camps, split the country, kill them, lock them up.
Split the country. Exactly. So the problem is because we're so centralized and because we have so much control over each other, that's why all this matters. Like the split the country is the right solution, not the camps. We split it. Go ahead.
Yeah, I can piggyback off of that. That's definitely the problem, is that we're forcing those people in Portland that live very different lives than someone in rural Texas to be under the same system. So they have to fight over that stick. If they want to live the way they want to live, then they have to defeat the rural people. And if the rural people want to preserve their more conservative, religious kind of, traditional lifestyle, then they have to attack and destroy, the weird hippies in Portland. And that having everyone forced to live in those boxes are kind of the issue. And I don't think that like if you look at any large country, they're extremely totalitarian, whether it be China, whether it be Russia, whether it be America, whether it be Australia, like any like large landmass country, you have extreme issues with this. To where if you look at more smaller states, they might have laws and stuff that like us as Americans would be fucking horrified at, but almost everyone agrees with them. And because almost everyone agrees with them, it's because it's such a small geographic area. They all have a shared culture. They all have like a shared like goals and perspectives. To where in America, like again, somehow Portland and Miami are considered the same country. It's like,
Yeah. The divisiveness and the culture war that you're talking about, I think, is a direct symptom of the problem that we're talking about here. And like Reed and Magnus both touched on, if we take away the institutions that are forcing us into these divisive narratives, we take away this omnipotent state that has the ability to tell us what we're supposed to care about every year during an election. And we don't have to all assimilate under one banner, then China misinforming about, like, China's not going to be able to spread a misinformation campaign on Facebook about my mayor. I'm not going to believe it. I know my mayor. I love him. He's an amazing dude. Like, he's not going to be able to they're not going to be able to turn me against my mayor. They're going to be able to turn me against my president. Because, well, A, my president already sucks, and I already know that. But B, like, I don't know him. He's just this totalitarian, like, thing way up here that I can't see or feel or know. That's a lot easier to misinform me about.
And that's like definitely like the foundation of liberty is community. Like no one will keep you safe more than your neighbor. Nobody will help you more than your neighbor. Like the people you know, the people you trust. And things have gotten so fucked now because like there's no sense of community in America. Like I often put the challenge out that I guarantee that like most people I talk to don't even know their neighbor's name, but then they're on Twitter arguing with someone 17 states away or something, about useless bullshit, but they don't even know their neighbor. So like that's obviously like the decentralization and like the building of community is more important, and that kind of helps with the tribalism and stuff. But by the way, David, you do have a guy going on a very interesting rant in your chat. So.
Yeah, I see that. I'm not exactly a fan.
Me either.
But that's people can be stupid.
Dave,
that's the greatest part about freedom.
Yep.
Think if Tulsi Gabbard had won and all of her policies have been put in place, how many people would be angry like around the country? And she was like kind of the most reasonable person running in 2020, and
easily the most moderate, like that, for sure.
Yeah. So like that person who is going to be able to unify the country does not exist. Like it doesn't exist. It's such a fallacy. And so, I mean, because no matter how moderate or creative or I don't know, how many different parts of the spectrum someone brings together, they can't unite a country of over 300 million people that live in such different ways. The only way is like completely decentralizing everything and letting people live the way they want, as long as they're not hurting each other. So
yeah, especially how bad it's gotten, because like there's simultaneously like a bunch of people in New York that think it's perfectly acceptable to like kick that door in and kill me over that rifle. And then at the same time, in Georgia, they tried to pass a bill that would have made it illegal for people to transition, to go through transgender surgery until they were 21 years old. So they could smoke, they could go to war, they could go to jail, but they can't do whatever. So it's like I can't get along with either of those people. So like the division, actually, a lot of people focus on like Republican or Democrat, but there's actually like several thousand, like groups and kind of ideologies, almost you could say, in this country, and a lot of us couldn't get along ever. And I don't ever see like there ever being some big, kumbaya join thing. And the big, like a lot of anarchism came out of a attempt to address what we were going to do post nationalism, because nationalism was like the thing that like kept all of this together for the longest time, was this like idea of like, well, we're Germans, we're French, like we're all the same just because we live in this box that we drew arbitrary lines over. And that worked for a while until like World War I and World War II. And that's like a lot of anarchist thought started coming out of like, well, how do we address this? And it was very ironic because it was internet thinking before the internet was invented, of like, well, you have people that are friends across these boundaries, and now you have people that are friends like I'm talking all of you guys, hundreds and hundreds of miles away from each other. So like anarchism always came up as like, well, the concept of nationalism is dying. Like the people don't really, even the Trump people that will go on and on and on and on about like America the best and whatever, will then turn around and talk about like, oh, we're a failing socialist state and all this shit. So it's like, how do we address post nationalism? And Michael Malice brings it up a lot of like, with the internet, like right now I can get a health insurance company based out of California. I can hire a private security company based out of Texas, and my internet provider currently is based out of Georgia, and I have Amazon ship every single thing to my house. So like, why couldn't I do that like without the government? If I can provide for my health, my security, my everything now, like extra governmentally, why do they even need to exist? If I can, why do I need to provide, like give the government to give foreign aid to people on the other side of the planet when I could just like do it through the internet?
And one thing I want to point out, just because I know that I know that what the comment section would say about that comment, and no offense to you, Magnus, but you're broke as a joke, right? A lot of the arguments against anarchy is that you could only do the things that you just mentioned, like if you were wealthy and successful. But like you and I have participated in various amounts of agorism, and we're broke as fuck.
And that goes like, I guess, I mean, you didn't ask this question, but I'll provide the answer to a question you didn't ask. But a lot of people talk about like, without the government, people would have never rose up to destroy people like Adolf Hitler or any of these like awful people across like history and world that have done horrific shit, and it required great military might to go and defeat them. To where I counter that with, I personally have 6 people, 2 of which are my personal friends and 4 of which I have on Twitter, that just dropped everything they owned, took all the money they had, bought a plane ticket and went to Syria, and then just wandered around and like got a rifle and a carrier and fought ISIS. Like they just, on their own dime, no help, like they just flew over to Syria to go fight ISIS. And like, obviously like World War II, you had men lie about their age to get into the military. Like I think if the second Adolf Hitler came up, like people would volunteer to do it, and you wouldn't need coercive force, and people would organize into militia that would represent like equivalent to modern military. So
do you
but
guys,
Magnus, militias don't exist right now.
do you guys,
sorry, let's say
sorry.
Go
do
ahead.
you guys believe that corporations were responsible for funding Hitler on both sides? Like, were they not responsible on both sides of the war?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I am like super concerned about corporations, and I feel like you guys aren't concerned about that, really. I mean, you're just saying it's all because of the government.
Well,
but
corporations
see that.
corporations by definition, like what a corporation is a government-backed security. The government, ensuring and protecting and facilitating trade of a government. So like. Of a business. Yeah. So a corporation is an element of the government, just like the stock market. Like all of this is like backed, funded, and protected by the government and the FTC and all of this shit. So like,
okay, so it's really going back to the the not Stone Age, but the like about when America was founded, like where, you know, we don't have big things stretching the whole country. It's all very local and yeah. Okay, that sounds awesome.
Well,
Like,
I mean, and even then, like the worst example in history is the East India Trading Company. But even that, they were essentially their own government. They were running around just like going to Indian villages and like occupying them with military arms and shit. But even in that case, the East Indian Trading Company was backed, legally protected, and funded by the English crown. So it's like even the worst forms of like corporatism, had government's dirty fingers all in it.
Yeah, but I want to bring up.
This is 3v1. You have to let her talk.
I'll let you respond.
So I mean, it sounds cool if we could just, you know, leave each other alone and have our, you know, own little communities and form things as we like and stuff. But it seems so unrealistic to me for various reasons. I mean, one big one is that we're totally ignoring the rest of the world, right? So we basically have to get the whole world to do this, I feel like, or else be totally uncompetitive and not functioning with the world, right? Like we wouldn't have passports, so we can't travel. And I mean, I don't know how we would interact with the global community.
I guess that's always a fair criticism of like definitely anarchism is somewhat of a betting on a kind of post-collapse thing. And I think everybody being in here kind of will probably agree on the fact that like we are heading for some form of economic shit show and destabilization globally one way or another. So definitely like it can't just come to be globally, but it's also like anarchism is a destination. Well, sorry, anarchism is not a destination, it's a way of living. So there's plenty of steps along the way to like anarchism that I would complain, but I would be like okay with. And libertarianism is one step of that. That's why I vote for the LP and stuff like that. So you have that going on, but also there's anarchism that exists right now in the world and is totally functional and working very well. You have the autodefensias in Mexico that literally just, entire villages and counties in Mexico just said, we're not part of Mexico anymore. The police aren't welcome. The government aren't welcome. They provide for themselves. It's more peaceful than the entire state of Mexico, less crime and better economic development. And then you have the Rojava in Syria, which is another anarchist commune. And they're actually like one of the most leading areas in the Middle East for like medical development and like quality of life and stuff like that. And that's an anarchist community. They have better doctors than the United States does. So it's like, it already exists,
Yeah, that's why I think it would work on a small scale, but I think those only work because there is a government for the whole country that is interacting with the rest of the world. I think if a whole country did that, then they would immediately be taken advantage of by...
In the Rojava, they're actively being attacked by Turkey, Syria, Iran, Israel, and the United States in some instances. We kind of go on and off, and they're still like doing it. So it's like they're not even protected by the government that in the country they are. They're actually antagonistically attacked by their government, and yet they're still succeeding and doing better than the actual government of the country they're in, which is like crazy, And again, like I always talk about the Rojava just from like I love showing it to feminists because it's super funny because they have like all female militias that scare the shit out of ISIS because they believe that if they're killed by a woman, they don't go to like the promised land. So they're like horrified of these fucking ladies running around with AKs, like fucking shit up in Syria.
That's awesome.
One of my favorite like things that's going on right now in the world, literally.
The YPG is awesome. And like I said, I have friends on my Twitter that literally like I have one friend that's still over there. And it's like still fighting in like the autonomous zone. So it's like sick.
Yeah. And so I wanna bring up two kind of fairly separate points. Because first of all, I want to kind of combat the notion that anarchy is like going back to pre-colonial like life. That it means there definitely is a there's a word for
There's
primitivism.
There's
anarcho-primitivism,
which is where the return to monkey meme comes from.
Right. that's not most people, right?
No, there's definitely a
and especially
there's another one too, which is anarcho-frontierism, which is essentially like begging for the world to go back to Wild West. So like that, there are like technological reductionist forms of anarchism, but then you also have like anarcho-transhumanism, which is like, let's use the internet to like transcend our meat suits and become like cyber anarchy. So you get both ends of it.
Yeah. So there's definitely and most of the, I would say a vast majority of anarchists fall into the like anarcho-communist, anarcho-capitalist, one of those two.
Yeah.
Or mutualist is a good one. So, we're all modern people. Most of us are in like our generation or the one before us. And they are, they know technology. They know how to work. We know how to be a better society than what we were in 1760. Right. But on top of that, I want to kind of follow that timeline a little bit, because 1776 happened, and we had by whatever 18 or 1780 whatever or 79, what is it, numbers, right? We had what you were describing earlier, Stacia, of like the perfect government almost, right? We had this or not perfect, right? We still had slavery, we still had issues, right? But we had that like
time.
Yeah, we had that like we solved the problems of the British state and created a government that was good and actually worked for the people for the most part. And it only took 200 and some years for that to become actually less than that.
Actually, it took less than 10 years, because you had the whole like Sam Adams thing and everything with the whiskey rebellion, where it they tried to put a tax on whiskey, and it caused like the actual first American Civil War, that happened in there. So like
that was under Washington.
Yeah,
that was less than a decade. That was in his first term.
Alive, and they immediately stepped into like tyrannical shit.
Yeah, within Washington's first term, he quelled a rebellion that was completely constitutional. And then the next guy, Adams, threw journalists into jail for posting things that disagreed with him. So it's like we could maybe fix the problem. Maybe, but it wouldn't last very long, and that's pretty proven throughout history.
Anarchism is considered like inherently cyclical to like, even in anarchist societies, it is expected and planned for and even like accounted within the theory that there will be pockets of people that will form a government. The government will grow. It'll be great in the beginning, and then it'll become tyrannical, and people have to take it down. That's why I say like it's not the only people who call anarchism a utopia are its critics. Like anarchists never say that anarchy will be a utopia. Like there will be problems, things will have to be fought. But I did mention of like how many Michael Malice quotes were dropped in. Here's one of my favorite ones of like, if we could cure cancer tomorrow, like the world would not be a utopia. We would still have other issues. It would be expensive. We would have to figure out how to get it to everybody. But that doesn't mean that we shouldn't try to cure cancer. It's like, so.
Yeah. And I definitely, back to kind of both Reed and Magnus's more original points, is this comes from a cooperative society that embraces anarchism and agorism, and like Magnus said, starves the state. I believe that world that we would have to create to get to that point is going to be better defensive against tyranny than an omnipotent state that is good for right now.
Yeah, I think that an evolution has to happen in society. I mean, I think people have to take it upon themselves to try to make the country better, because really no matter what governing system you have, if the people suck, then the country's going to suck. So if you have a bunch of shitty people living in an anarchist society, it would still suck. I think that certain governing systems obviously are open to worse violations and more prone to violence and more prone to making people hate each other. I think anarchism is the least likely to do that. But if you still have a country full of 330 million shitty people who are not taking care of each other and only looking out for themselves, then yeah, I mean,
I think the government has a part to do with that, though, particularly like the idea of liberal government, to where so many people don't help each other because they just assume that it's the government's job and that the government has it under control. And a lot of people, like especially normies, you talk to a lot of normies, they assume that the government is way more efficient in helping way more people than it actually is. Like when I go to like liberals and like actually like go into depth of like, this is what like the adoption, like, you know, the federal like adoption agencies and shit do, and like go through like this is the amount of sexual assault in public schools against young girls, and like start going through all this shit. They're like, oh my God. But they assume like, oh, well, the government has it, so I don't have to go and fix my road. I don't have to, you know, go help my neighbor. I don't have to actually provide for each other. And I think it like that idea kind of leads to that whole cycle they talk about of like hard times create good men create weak men create hard times create good men. So like you get that in there of people just assuming they can defer helping their neighbor to the government when the government isn't doing a fucking job at all. And I definitely, like, even though, you know, I talk about anarchy, like I also consider myself a post-anarchist, because when you think about it, like whether it be communism, capitalism, like, you know, the founding fathers, anything like that, we're all basing our modern society off the writings and the power structures and the governmental systems of a bunch of people that have been dead for like 100+ years. Like all these people were in a pre-telegram world, and we are now in a post-cell phone world. And we're still trying to figure out of like, how do we, you know, run society and build culture and do economics and everything based off of like all these horribly outdated systems that like never took into the fact that like I could call someone in India right now and then have them like mail me a shirt, you know, like the founding fathers were thinking about that. Marx wasn't thinking about that. Like, you know,
neither was Rothbard or Mises or for any of the libertarians in here. Like,
yeah, like again, like, and not to take away from any of the good ideas they had. Like you can pull, there's still great things to pull from that. But like, we do have to start thinking of like, well, we have cell phones and the internet now. And we underutilize those tools so much in like fucking everything, you know, like why are we not voting on the internet? Why can I email my representatives? Why does the IRS still send me paper mail? You know, like we underutilize all this shit, you know? So I think becoming modern would make anarchy even more possible with the internet and shit like that.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of my criticisms of religion is that you're trying to take things from a book that's 4,000 years old and apply it to today as absolute truth. And so many people do that with any philosophy. It's not just religion. They do that with economics too. I mean, so like,
how did God feel about Chatterbait?
Yeah, so it's good to. It's good to read them. Like I think it's good to, just like religious texts. I think religious texts still have some truth that's important today. Just like it's good to read Mises and Rothbard and Spooner or whatever. But if that's all you can do is just read them and then try to figure out how they apply to today without having any empirical evidence or, experiences for yourself, then it's kind of dead because things change.
We haven't had our modern update because like the Enlightenment was a response to the fact of like, oh well, we don't need like kings and landlords anymore. Like let's update that. Then you had like Enlightenment thinking, and then next came along like the Industrial Revolution and stuff, and then Marx came along and he was like, hey, all these people, like all this wealth is concentrated in these industrial centers, and this is really weird. You got kids working in smog factories and stuff like that. And then after that came like the post-industrial revolution where we transcended that. And like, then we started, putting kids in school, and we had a bunch of excess like labor and wealth and everything. So Marx became outdated because the urban proletariat that he described working in the factories doesn't really exist anymore.
Right.
And ever since then, like, who's the next guy? Like, who's the next theory, the next like modern political, there hasn't been one. We're still all
McKenna.
Terrence McKenna was a Return to Monkey guy.
I know, but I still love almost everything he has to say about philosophy, religion, and government.
He's a very wise terrorist. He's a very wise terrorist.
Yeah, I think I've sent you a couple of McKenna videos, Stacia. Possibly, maybe not. Maybe they were all Alan Watts.
No. What were you gonna say, Stacia?
So yeah, I actually agree with you a lot on that. That we haven't updated the system, and I feel like that's why I've been so interested in talking to people with new ideas and stuff. Because I think you're right that some people are like, oh, we need to go back to this, or we need communism, or all these things that have already kind of been tried in a certain form, and
or their problems that they address have been solved.
Yeah. So I agree with you on that. Would you guys talk like you're really concerned about human lives, but it really sounds to me like there would be way more death in this society. Can you explain how that wouldn't happen? Like, is there who is the person who says it's illegal to kill people?
Don't we already say that though?
Yeah, and
but who would say that?
But people still do that though right now. Like I'm
but not much.
A lot.
Okay, so you're saying that no one would kill any more people than they kill now, even if there were no laws against it, and they also had to defend their own land, I think their own everything.
I think crime and domestic violence in between individuals and stuff like that would probably remain constant. But what would go down is the million Iraqis that we killed.
That's what I was.
That's not happening. Like the level of death,
but again,
drops giant scale.
Okay, but again, that's something that we could address in a much less drastic manner. It's not like 0 to 100. There's totally different options for solving that, right?
Right. I mean, but every single major country in the world is taking part in some form of military extremism against another nation. The only ones that aren't are very small local monoculture countries, which is again, that's a step towards anarchism, breaking America down to the 50 states all becoming their own country. That's a step. It doesn't have to go all the way. But when you look at again, Russia, China, England, France, Italy, all the major states in Africa, Australia, Japan, China, all these places are bombing somewhere. They're killing people somewhere.
Really? Japan doesn't have a military.
Japan deployed fucking people to Afghanistan. There was a big drama over it. There's Japanese military contractors in Japan. Well, in Afghanistan. It's even Japan, so it's ugh.
I just wanted to say,
they don't have.
Okay. There's it's illegal by their own constitution to deploy the military abroad, but there's been arguments and debates to change that. So even
that's what I want to say is pointing to what Magnus just said. It's illegal. It's unconstitutional what they're doing. Most of the military escapades we do are unconstitutional. They're already illegal. So that points to the defeat in itself right there. What's the point? We've already made it illegal. It's already against the law. We do it anyway, and we facilitate it through this giant state. And that was what I was saying at the very beginning of the conversation, is that we just push things off to one level. So we don't see maybe as much violence right in front of us, but we facilitate it at a giant scale worldwide. So the idea that we're preventing violence is completely false. We're causing so much more violence.
Yeah, our peace here is bought off the fucking piles of millions of corpses.
Yes.
Yeah, and I think Japan. Sorry, I don't mean to pile up on you, but Japan. I think you just kind of Japan's a really, really, really great example here, because you've brought them up multiple times tonight about how great they are, and they are great in a lot of ways, but they're still killing innocent Iraqis and Afghanistanis. They still broke their own law to become, to what I was saying, the government will still always end up being totalitarian and murdering innocent people abroad and doing these things, regardless of how good they are at the moment.
And also, I just pulled it up now, but they're also giving economic funding to the coup in Myanmar. So even if they aren't doing it militarily, they're still sending blood money out. And then obviously, a lot of weapons manufacturing and stuff like that happens in Japan because they're essentially a vassal state of the United States, and we definitely they provide a lot of electronics and stuff like that to the U.S. military and all that going on. So it's like,
So
even if it's not bombs, it's buying bombs, you know.
Okay. So, and people have done this throughout history, right? Like at every point in history, there are examples of humans killing other humans, right? So this seems to be a human thing. But you're thinking there can be a society where humans are not killing other humans.
No, they'll still be killing other humans, just not on a fucking massive, global biblical scale.
Yeah, so this is the idea that we don't think utopia exists. Like none of the three of us believe in utopia. It's the false idea that the state is preventing violence. The state is facilitating so much more violence than we would be capable of without it.
Okay. So in this world that we want to create, the whole world has to be anarchist, right? Because it can't just be I mean, because okay.
But that's so the thing of in terms of sorry.
So how do we fight off other people from taking our land in America if we don't have a military? Or who controls like our planes and our nukes and our who's handling that?
Laughs in Taliban, laughs in people that are mostly illiterate tribesmen in robes and sandals using 50-year-old rifles that have defeated the Soviet Union and the United States military, and they mostly live in a semi-tribalistic anarchist state in northern Afghanistan. Like the tribal.
How I mean, how? You need to explain that, because I mean, we must not have been trying, or or how? I'm really curious how that happened.
It's just because when it comes to government and it comes to the actual military, there is hierarchy, there is chains of command. It's very slow moving. It's not very reactionary. There's a lot of steps to go on. I personally knowing a lot of people that are over in Afghanistan, if they want to call in, if they want permission to fire a rocket at a cave, they have to call to the FOB, the forward operating base, and then they have to call back, and then they have to get permission, and then they're called. Then the call goes all the way back through to be well, are there any civilians? And they say no, and then that call goes all the way back through. Meanwhile, Amir, this the random Afghani farmer, just picks up his rifles and goes shoots at a U.S. Marine. And obviously also the point of these are tight-knit communities, these are tight-knit structures. So what does it in Afghanistan isn't the guy with a rifle, it's the bakery that allows them to hide those rifles underneath the floorboards after they shoot at Marines. And that's kind of thing that I always joke to where if you think a foreign government could hold Chicago when the local police can't hold Chicago, so I think, and it brings up, I'll keep bringing up the Rahova. The Rahova has Russia, Turkey, the United States, Israel, and Syria all trying to kill them, and they have failed. So that is every major economic and military power almost in the entire planet besides China that are actively trying to kill this small autonomous zone of people, and they have failed. So it's that just kind of goes to show of people are way scarier autonomously and organized within their communities than the military or the government ever will be.
I'm so unconvinced. I'm sorry.
I'm provided that's a real world example though. That's a legitimate. It's happening right now. You can get on a plane and go to the.
Okay, so I have a billion other examples. For example, Myanmar, right? The state is trying to do stuff there. Why can't the people handle that? If people joining together can overthrow.
I mean, there's active anarchist communities getting to gun battles with the government over there right now, and they're doing that on their own. I mean, I personally know people
so
that are currently sending 3D printers to Myanmar so they could 3D print their own guns, which is awesome as fuck.
Super based.
But do you get my point that there are a billion examples? For example, maybe the U.S., where the state or some entity that has a military or that has the police. Why can't we just get rid of the police? Well, I mean, does that make sense? You're saying if we all just join together and fight the enemies, we can do it. But I don't see many.
I want to
like,
bring up just one clarification, because the examples that you're using is the state killing its own people.
Yeah.
Not one country killing another country's people. That's a lot harder. For China to come to the US and kill Americans in the US to somehow get from California to New York and take all of that is going to be a hell of a lot harder than it is for the American military to come kill us.
The trees will be speaking fucking hillbilly. from coast to coast, the trees will be speaking. But no, but you know, again, to your point, I do notice you keep saying all. Like, it's not about all. Popularity and numbers are only a win condition in democracy. We're not participating in democracy. Like, it doesn't matter if all of the United States does it. It only matters if you and a small, like, it doesn't even have to be a small, just you do it. Like, I'm already living in anarchism because I don't participate in the government in any form and fashion. I will not say all the ways I don't participate in the government because I will guarantee I get my door kicked in, but I'm already outside of it. And I already have a group of individuals that I am working with, that I run around with, that are doing it as well. And if that keep getting expanding, it doesn't matter if it's one building. It doesn't matter if it's one apartment complex, one city block, one state. Like, the scale doesn't matter. It's just doing it.
My concern is that the scale does matter. Like, it seems like it makes sense within, you know, a small community, but it doesn't make sense for a large nation to, I guess. But maybe we're also kind of crossing wires or whatever in terms of, like, I don't know if you're thinking this is actually going to happen. Like, I mean, it seems like none of you guys are thinking it's more like an ideal, right?
It's just something that it's a goal to always go for. And I mean, I think it will, especially in post-collapse America, which I feel like we're coming towards very rapidly. It's definitely gonna happen because there's no other option. Like, you know, period.
Well, sure.
But that's the other thing, important thing to keep about, is a lot of people get confused on anarchy, where they assume that there would be no government, that there'd be no structure, there'd be no military or hierarchy, that nobody would be in control. The only difference between a normal government and anarchism is consent. It's the idea that I can opt in and I can opt out of any time. And that's kind of what they do in Rahova, to where Rahova is a book-chin, like, Marxist, like, autonomous zone. But there's still businesses there. And the way they handle that is, if you want all the benefits of being part of the commune, then there's no private ownership. Like, it's you know, big, what's the word? Co-ops and stuff like that. But you're allowed to run a business. But if you run that business, then you opt out. You no longer get all the benefits of that community, the support and the aid and everything, but you're free to do what you want. In the same way of, like, the United States government could exist right now in the exact same way it does. And it could be anarchism, as long as at any point I'm like, well, I just don't want to participate anymore. And the United States government will be like, okay, well, then we're not, you know, providing you water, providing you healthcare, providing you defense or anything like that, but you're free to go your own way. And that's kind of how you get, like, the idea of panarchy, which is what I advocate for, of, like, Reed can run his capitalist business, and then the next door I could run a mutualist co-op, and then the next door there could be an apartment complex that's a whole bunch of communists doing communist shit. As long as I have the ability to leave and go into any one of those with permission from those people, and then opt out at any point, and those people have the ability to accept or deny me voluntarily, then it's anarchism. That's all anarchism is consent.
And this is where we kind of have to start going back up on the political spectrum real quick in the conversation, because we're talking about how we get there, right? And we get there through libertarianism, right? So the lack of forcing other people into what you want. So, like, me, Reed, and Magnus are never going to, like, to try to force America into anarchy. I'm never gonna try to force you to be an anarchist. If you don't want to be an anarchist, that's fine. That's completely fine.
You're
still my best friend. I still love you. Yeah. It's okay. Like,
you can't force someone to be an anarchist, because that's I'm going to force you to not be forced to do anything. You know, like, that doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, so we're not trying to force a country into anarchy. We're just trying to get to a place where we won't get murdered for being anarchists, because that's what is routinely
that's the
in
whole
America.
thing. That's the whole thing of agorism. That's like the whole thing of counter economics and stuff like that. Is like, I'm not running to the United States government and burning the Capitol down. I'm just not playing by their rules anymore, and I'm going to do my own thing, and I'm going to live my own life autonomously and free as an individual. And they will inevitably kill me for this, and I'm prepared for that. But it's like, that's kind of the idea behind it. And I'm actually might be giving a presentation at the Michigan Libertarian Party convention about practical agora, which will be super cool. But yeah, that's
when is that?
I think it's in June. I have to double check. But yeah, that's just like the main thing is like, you could have like, you could literally go in this like example I'm providing. You could have the United States and just be like, well, I'm terrified of foreign people invading. I'm terrified of criminals. I want police. I want security. I want even like free healthcare and everything. I voluntarily opt into that. And then that single moment that I don't like that system, that I want to try another system, that maybe I just want to go on my own and be an egoist, which like egoist anarchy is all about. Like, I'm literally God and no one else matters, you know? Like, then at any point, you
too many fucking terms in this conversation.
Oh, you should
need a whole new dictionary to understand what the fuck we're talking about.
Trip and fall into anarchist theory, and you'll start speaking like a foreign fucking person. No one will understand you. But anyway, to my point, like, at any point, if you're not happy with that, then you could just check out of that. And that's all it is just giving people the option of like to walk out the door and be like, well, I don't want to do this anymore. And that's all anarchism is, really, is just, consent. And I've heard the whole thing of libertarianism is based off of consent. Well, libertarianism is just diet anarchy. So like, it's the same thing,
basically.
So it seems like it kind of has the same problem as communism. I don't know, just
those two things aren't mutually exclusive in any way.
Okay, but I'm sure. But I'm getting the impression that like the people who don't think like that, right? The people who are authoritarian and who want to take advantage and who want to, like take things, can just be like, well, now no, does it not?
They can do that now, though. Like, my favorite Michael Malice quote is every critique of anarchy just leads to the description of the status quo. Like, we already have like authoritarians and dictators that just seize power. We already have criminal gangs running around and harassing and attacking people. They're called the police. We already have like corrupt systems. We already have, warlords. We already have rigged elections. This is all happening now. Like, you can go out and watch all this,
But do we not have super comfortable lives? Like, I feel like the scale is just, the vast majority.
I don't. Yeah. Well, again, like the two things to consider that is, one, like we said, like that comfort is built off of a fuck ton of imperialism and a lot of dead kids across the entire world. Our oil, a lot of the products that are used to build this computer is used through like really imperialistic, fucked up, authoritarian ways to achieve and get to this point. And I think it's possible without that just as well. But then there's also like the fact of like, not all of us have had very great lives. Like I have a lot of dead friends, like personal friends that have been killed by the police. I have a lot of family that have been killed by the police. I've had a lot of people that have been fucked over by the government, that have been lied to by the government, that have been fucked over by the medical establishment, been fucked over by the IRS. So it's like, there is a class of people that are living very comfortably and very happy in America. And there is a fucking lot of us that aren't,
Mm-hmm. And also to pretend that we couldn't have the good things that we have without the state is like what comforts do you currently possess purely and only because of the state, where no other thing besides a government could provide you that comfort?
Purely and only because of the state. I don't think that's the role of the state, though.
What do you view the role of the state? I guess that should have been the most like important in terms of defining like what do you feel like why does government exist, and what is in its optimal form? What is it accomplishing?
Okay, cool. So I see government as something that it should be by consent, right? It should be that people, choose their government, choose their representatives, and the representatives are accountable to the people. And then the government should be an entity that is not focused on profit, right? It should. We need to set up the game theory so that it's not, not set up in a way that people are just, using it for profit. And then it should be the thing that provides the services that like aren't necessarily profitable but are really beneficial. And another thought is like capitalism and the free market is really good at figuring out how to do things, but it's not necessarily great at figuring out what to do, because it tends to figure out what to do based on self, like just personal, like how can I make the most money out of the situation? And yeah, so what else? I'm trying to like organize a lot of thoughts.
It's only like the largest human question, second only to what is the meaning of life. So take your time.
So I guess a big question here is, Stacia, do you think that you should be able to opt out of the government?
I don't know that is I'm going to say no, because I don't think if I have a business that I should be able to lie on the packaging that it does this, and this, and
they already do that though.
They do that right now, yeah.
But
never forget that like the FTC, the Food and Drug Administration, when I forget what company it was, they were releasing products that had too much of like radium or something like that. They just increased the acceptable amount of radium in food products.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I realize that, but then we catch it and then we fix it, and or that's how it. Like just finding something that's not going right and then saying the whole thing is bad is the thing that I'm disagreeing with, right? Like I agree that that's a problem. I'm just saying I don't think the answer is throw out the whole thing, because I think the thing itself can work. I think. I mean, now. Yeah, sure.
So, I mean, you say like what we're pushing for is idealism. What examples has the government actually fixed itself without major sacrifices? So the example you gave in the first half of the video was over, I forget what legislation passed, but it was in the omnibus bill. So not a win overall, like a tiny little bit of legislation we get for trillions of dollars going overseas. So when has the government actually made itself better? Like, what are some concrete examples of it doing that?
Without violence.
Without violence, or without like major...
without violence from us?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Oh.
The thing I bring up is like people are like, oh, well, the government, like civil rights and everything. It's like, yeah, we got civil rights because of like the Stonewall riots and like, like riots over, like the civil rights movement and everything like that. People will bring up unions, but we only got unions because of Stone Mountain, because a bunch of like coal miners got into gunfights with the U.S. military. Like, every major like positive change has kind of been bought with like a lot of like blood and handguns.
Sure. But with like the civil rights thing, weren't there a lot of people who weren't pro that? Like. Yeah. So then the problem isn't completely the government. It's also like the people disagree. And so wouldn't they just have been fighting each other?
That goes to the thing though of like Jim Crow was enforced by the government. There was bus companies that wanted to get rid of segregation that were fined by the government because it was a state policy. Slave catching, infamously, I bring this up a lot, to where in a lot of southern states, slave patrols were mandatory. So they would literally go through the neighborhoods and be like, it's your week on the slave patrol. And even if you were even if you secretly loved a black woman and you were super pro abolition or whatever, then the government's going to come and send goons to you. And if you don't participate in that slave patrol and go out and look for, flee safe, then you're going to go in jail. So like a lot of that has like been enforced by and stimulated by and maintained by the government. And even like abolition of these things weren't really done by the government. It had already accomplished culturally on a level, and the government just gave it the tiny little push.
So hold on. Let's let Stacia answer the question.
Yeah.
It's kind of sounding to me like if you have a nail, no, if you have a hammer, everything's a nail, and it just looks like there are different things working together to me. Yeah. So for example, like corporations play a role, right? And then human nature plays a role, just like, right? And culture plays a role. And now social media and technology plays a role. And it's like this super complex system. And I feel like this conversation to me seems like you see a problem in the system, like you see all these problems and you're like, that thing is causing it. And it just keeps seeming to me like it's actually way more complicated than that and going to be way more complicated to fix. And we can't just like blame this one part of the whole complex system.
Yeah, I guess
So
I would. Sorry, Reed, you can go ahead. I've been talking a lot.
At the beginning, I said the government doesn't cause all of our problems. It's that it's not the solution to our problems. We got to give up the idea that the government is going to fix the problems. If we got rid of the government, our problems don't all go away on day one. I don't think any anarchist actually thinks that. It's just that so many people think that the government is the way that we fix the problems we're in now. But the underlying point of the question I asked you was, I think
that what you're arguing against is not what we're talking about.
What?
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Reed.
Huh?
I come here.
We're all like, wait, what?
Yeah.
Come here.
My underlying point was, though, that I think it's utopian to think that the government is going to fix the problems. And that is what statists think. Statists do think that the government is going to fix the problem. Anarchists don't think that anarchy is going to automatically fix all of our problems. That's the difference I see.
And it's just like I feel like human progress will happen more along the lines too of like accepting the diversity that anarchy brings, because like we do have it now to where like America as like a corporatist, like mildly authoritarian government thing has done has pushed medicine and technology and stuff like that forward a lot. But also, we don't have a cure for lung cancer. But like communist Cuba does have a cure for lung cancer. So like accepting like the diversity of that through anarchism of like, allowing people to take multiple paths voluntarily without being forced into these systems may come up with new solutions in technology that like we'll never think of. Like the internet that we're on now was originally created by DARPA and everything. And then a bunch of anarchists got a hold of it. And now, because of a bunch of anarchists that got a hold of it and did what they did with it, we're sitting here having this conversation, So like allowing that like diversity of allowing people to choose their own destiny and how they want to live and the people they want to surround themselves and the system they want to be under takes so much pressure off that we may solve problems that we didn't even know were problems. And that's, I feel like I view it through like a progressive, not in the sense of like what American progressive means, but actually like progressing humanity in that form. And I definitely do feel like it won't be the answer to every problem, but also like it will address problems. And I feel like almost every single thing you can go down and it'll either be better or remain the exact same we're living now.
So I want to go back to something when you were talking about like we could split up and you were saying, New York is this way and Georgia's this way and Oregon's this way. Why aren't they just separate and, governing themselves?
Right.
And I agree there's some of that, right? There is some like in the Midwest is different than in California overall. And, all these places do have some of their own kind of vibe. But there's a ton of people who like right next door don't agree with each other, right? In fact, I think that's probably the norm, right? Is for all these people to live in the same town and have totally different views, right? There's just, does that make sense? So I don't know if it's...
I agree with you, but they're not nearly as different of views as somebody from rural Kentucky and somebody from LA. Like your next door neighbor is going to agree with you on most likely going to agree with you on more things than a farmer from rural Kentucky.
But you also see a lot of people moving to places to be around people that agree with them more. So you see that as
more.
well.
Yeah, especially with remote work.
And that goes into the the kind of, using the internet to kind of evolve anarchism is like, especially with the internet, like you have communities that are online that like don't even have next to each other. Like right now I have, probably like 9,000, 10,000 people that if I got into any trouble, I could put a phone call out and they would all show up here with guns within like a couple hours. And that is only a thing because of the internet. And none of those people live next to me. They're all spread out over the country. So a lot like embracing like that online communal thing can make it past that. But what kind of hinders that is like these borders, like we can even keep it within the United States of like different laws among any other places. I would love to live in California. I would love to live in Vermont. I would love to live in Texas, but like there's laws that I just wouldn't be able to tolerate. But maybe if it was a little bit different, then maybe I could go there. Maybe if there was, like northern Texas broke off and became just like a very like rustic rural thing and they had their own laws and everything like that and everyone agreed upon it. And like as long as you agree to that, you're allowed to welcome there, then I'd probably go there, So that's kind of just how that of like. And also a lot of those divisions and those disagreements are based off of like having the stick. I would not care whatsoever about my gun control neighbor if my gun control neighbor had no power to enforce gun control, like a lot of that. I feel like a lot of, when it comes to like the trans right issue, like I feel like a culture war would die down a lot if you didn't have a whole bunch of people that are just terrified of like a bunch of Republicans taking their rights away, at any moment with like a simple majority vote and suddenly you're not allowed to transition until you're 25 years old or some shit.
But can't they just go to another state where they can do that? Like by the same logic.
Like, federalism is like a step along that. But like we're also seeing that like the federal government is expanding to the point where they're not allowing people to have these individual like state autonomous like beliefs. You're seeing right now that despite like constitutional carry being almost passed in like I think like 20 states now, the federal government is running around talking about like banning rifles. So it's like, the concept of federalism is like broken down in America. And America was like a lot of like anarchy is like based off of Cicero, and the Cicero was one of the like favorite authors of a lot of the founding fathers, and like federalism comes out of a lot of Cicero's writing and stuff like that, to where like original America with the federalism was like a step towards that I would be more comfortable with. But the government power is expanded to the point where you don't allow that autonomous idea, because the idea of federalism is very anarchistic of like, hey, there's all these independent autonomous regions and they have sovereignty over themselves, but they happen to agree with us. We kind of exist in like a loose agreement with each other. Like, that's a very anarchist kind of idea.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, I'm pro that.
I guess the main thing I'd want to ask you about is like the fear of like not wanting people to opt out and like governments just kind of doing whatever they want to do. I'd want to hear like your biggest, like, because you said the corporation thing, but like we brought up like that kind of already happens, and also corporations sometimes just leave countries. They're like, oh well, we don't like your rules, we're going to keep selling your products to Americans, but we're just going to fuck off to China where they don't care if we put suicide nets around our factories, like. So that kind of already exists. But besides the corporation thing, what would you be personally uncomfortable with of me just being like, well, I'm not an American anymore. I'm a sovereign citizen. I can do whatever I want.
I can do whatever I want. Okay. I haven't thought this through, so I'm thinking it through now.
It's a really weird, wild way to thinking if you hadn't like put your brain through it a lot. So I don't blame people for being skeptical. I'm never offended if people are like
I said at the beginning, this took me 6 years to get from where you are right now to where I am right now, and I'm still not even as far down the rabbit hole as the other two people in this conversation.
I was raised like an anarchist and then became like a super statist and then like went through like libertarianism back to anarchy. So like I've done the whole fucking.
Can I ask, would it be anarchism then if I thought people could just opt out? Because I feel like I'm not.
You'd be an anarchist immediately if you just said that people could just have total autonomy.
Yeah, if you had answered yes to my original question, you would be an anarchist.
Because I don't know what state you live in, but whatever state you lived in, if you wanted that state to like provide.
She lived in the second worst state in the country.
Ohio?
California.
Oh,
nice.
But if California became its own autonomous zone, essentially the whole state of California, and you wanted free healthcare, you wanted a military, you wanted elections, you wanted like laws against, like selling people and stuff like that. That's all perfectly fine, as long as if at any point I could just be like, well, I'm not following those rules anymore. I also don't get any of the benefits of those rules anymore, but I'm just gonna do my own thing. Then you're an anarchist. Period. There's anarcho-monarchy. Like anarcho-monarchy exists, where like 100 people willingly say to worship a guy saying he's the spokesperson of the giant spaghetti monster, and they all follow him, as long as at any moment they could be like, well, he's not my king anymore, and fuck off. Like that exists,
Hey guys, I gotta sign out. I gotta go to bed.
Yeah, we're starting to. Yeah, we're going a little over, but
we are.
Thank you, sir.
I'm a chronic insomniac. Reed, we have to talk again soon.
Same.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, y'all. Have you not been on his show yet?
No,
he
was
has.
he was.
I'm
No, I've been on
secretary.
his show. He was the third. Yeah, he was the third show I ever went on.
Yeah. Oh wait, were you right after? Was I right after Liberty lockdown or?
It went Liberty lockdown, Jimmy Dore, or you.
Damn. Wait, was I number 4 then?
No.
Or were there others between those?
No, there was fucking hundreds, because I had Alex Jones
fair.
after you, and like
right, I actually watched that one.
Liberal gun owners and fucking Fiorella and the fucking Nico House, all those people. Dude, I'm running. I started wanting to make clips of all my podcasts I've been on, and then I was like, holy fuck, this is daunting. I have like probably 100 hours now of just my ass talking to this fucking camera.
I feel that so hard. The Free Speech Media, who is where we're streaming on, as well as YouTube and Twitter, and I forgot to put their logo back up. Whoops. But they asked us to find like little clips of our shows to put into a commercial, and I was like, bruh, I've got 60 or 50 something episodes now. Like there's way too many hours of content for me to sift through to find my best lines. Like I don't know where those were. I was stoned the whole time.
All right, guys, I'll see you later.
All right, good night, Reed.
So now the tables have evened more. I do like how we're both on top and she's on bottom too.
Right.
That's great.
That's what she said.
So I'm trying to think, like some things like health insurance or things like where it relies on kind of like everyone communally, agreeing to it, or things that benefit like, disabled people or like things like that might. I don't know. I don't know if they would work if everyone could just opt out who didn't need them.
But I mean, you have so many volunteers already that like participate. They run nonprofits, they run charities, they like willingly go out and volunteer for these organizations. There's tons of people that just dump money into this voluntarily, not even like on top of their taxes that are already going into it, and probably would dump more money into it. Like I definitely have like the capitalist viewpoint of like, me personally, like as soon as I have like a 2-story house like on a lake and like a semi-decent car, I don't need anything else. So all the other money I make, I'm just going to throw into being a big environmentalist. I'm going to throw into fucking environmentalism, that will be willingly my own money, my own time, nobody telling me to do it. Like I've always preached like environmental anarchism, to where I was part of a anarchist collective up in northern Michigan, where we just met up on Saturday and went down the river in tubes and picked up garbage every single Saturday. Nobody was giving us money for that. Nobody asked us to do that. We just got together as individuals and was like, hey, we like clean water and things to be fucking pretty. Let's go do it,
I think Dan Berman's another great example of that with the healthcare industry, because you've brought that up a number of times. There is only one person in America that you can buy $12 insulin from. And he has to protect himself with armed militiamen while he's selling it to you because of the state. But there's only one human in America that you can buy $12 insulin from, and that's an anarchist.
And he's committing a crime to do it, and live streaming himself while doing that, and using a volunteer autonomous militia, he even promotes like using Bitcoin, which is an anarchist, thing. And I guess the other instances of that is like the 3D gun printing community, where you have all these people like designing, facilitating, and giving out lectures and guides and stuff like that of how to 3D print guns and like sending each other parts and stuff like that. That's not only completely voluntary, but it's also like not anti-capitalist, but like non-capitalist at all. Like nobody, Ivan doesn't get any money. Control Pew doesn't get any money. They're doing it all for free. So like, that's very anarchistic, you know?
But there are things that like wouldn't work if people could just opt out. I'm pretty sure, like zoning, right? Like, I think that's kind of, I don't know. I like zoning.
I'm very anti-zoning. So.
Yeah. I'm sorry, you're gonna lose me on that one a
Very
little
anti-zoning.
bit.
Very anti-zoning.
Zoning is the reason that housing is so expensive in New York City. Zoning is an extremely racist policy that's been used to keep poor communities even poorer for like a century and a half now. I'm not a fan of zoning.
Is that abuse of zoning? I mean, are there not countries where zoning is working? Like,
I mean, like at the end of the day, like it's all inherently abusive because like you don't really see it, but you almost go talk to everybody. And like the best example of that is that one of my friends in Tennessee wanted to build a garage and then put a loft above it. And they told him that because his residential area was not zoned for multiple buildings on one property, that he couldn't do that. And it's like, why? There's no reason why. Like it's his property. It doesn't hurt anybody. It doesn't disrupt anything. It doesn't cause any ecological damage or anything like that. But the government just arbitrarily came in and is like, no, you can't build another house on your property because reasons.
Mm-hmm. And like the housing associations are a great example of like an agorist version of that. You know, if you're in a neighborhood that really cares about being able to see all the stars and you don't want a skyscraper in there, you can come together as a community and have an agreement that like, you know, nobody here is gonna build a skyscraper on their thing, and you know, you sign a contract saying that you'll never build a skyscraper on your private property.
And you get discount housing prices, and you get like security in a lot of these places and all that. But at the same time, you can be like, well, I'm not part of the homeowners association anymore. Fuck all y'all, and then just own your property. But then you lose all of those benefits. I super anarchistic fucking idea, you know?
Yeah. Okay, I actually like that one.
Not to sidetrack, but it's my favorite story ever of a dude was in a homeowners association and he bought a tank and he parked the tank out in his front yard and people were like, fuck you, you can't have a tank there anymore. So he left the homeowners association and they tried to sick the city on him to like remove the tank. And the guy just said like, good luck, because it's a tank. You can't just fucking tow it, you know, like it's a fucking tank. So he leaves it parked out in his front yard to this day, and it makes all of his bougie neighbors mad.
Wow.
A cold dead tank.
If only we could actually arm them, that would be great.
You can if you just don't care about the law.
Well, that's true.
That's the thing. People like there's been this narrative kind of going around lately of like, oh, Magnus is so harmless and he'll never hurt anybody and blah blah blah. And I'm like, that is true, but I also like actively run around telling people to like become criminals, like with a smile on my face while I do it. Like, hey,
well, that just means you're a real libertarian.
Like, yeah, that's that goes to our whole. We won't sidetrack the conversation. When I yell at libertarians to do libertarian shit, I'm like, hey, how about you just go out and like actually do what you talk about instead of just talk about what you talk about.
You mean we shouldn't have looked heavily into our COVID lockdown restrictions before planning our New York City convention for the Libertarian Party?
Yeah, I know. You should have just done it anyways.
Yeah, I'm totally with you on that. I really wanted to do that. I really wanted to just pack us all into like somebody's fucking like a private bit because there's actually a coffee house in Soho that's owned by a libertarian that's been very helpful for a couple of other campaigns. Like my friend Devin ran for public advocate in 2019, and he was able to use the back room of this coffee house for his like campaign office. So I'm like, why don't we just have it there? And if we all get arrested for doing this, like that's the most news the New York City Libertarian Party would ever get ever.
Yeah. And I mean, like I got when it comes to like private security and like events like that, I always bring up that there's the capitalist and then the anti-capitalist answer, to where the capitalist answer is Detroit City actually has like multiple private security police forces that the communities that they watch and the businesses that they protect have less crime. There's less violence, and on top of that, they have a better public relations record with people than the actual cops do, and that's like capitalist private. And then on the anti-capitalist side of it, you have my organization, to where like we do voluntary, zero for profit, like private fucking armed security for protests and events and businesses and political stuff off of our own back. So you have a whole bunch of guys that are like militarily trained with military equipment that just take off Saturday to go protect people for no profit or benefit whatsoever. If you combine both of those and allow both of those to exist in the same space, then like security's, done, checkmate, so.
Mm-hmm. I like that. Yeah, and that's really the beauty of anarchy, is that you get to have a million different answers. Like I said earlier, like each group of 350 people could come up with a different answer, and then you would have a million different solutions to all of the problems that you're talking about today.
Yeah, and I grew up on a anarcho-communist, lesbian, pagan commune, like right next to it. Went there every single day. And
the best fucking like 5-hour car ride you could ever have is talking to Magnus about the commune he grew up with.
Yeah. Well, we did talk a lot about that.
Yeah. We did talk a lot about that.
I love those ladies, and they're still going to this day, and they don't pay taxes, and the government fucks with them all the time, and they just don't give a shit, and they just keep dancing around the maypole and planting their fucking turnips and telling the government to fuck off, and they just do their own thing. And there's another one in Tennessee that's it's called like Misty Mountain or something like that, and that's like a bunch of like gay men who just like went and took over the side of a mountain and run a commune up there, and like the government can't do anything about it, and they can't shut them down, and they just do their own thing, and they're perfectly happy and peaceful and calm and fine up there. So
okay, do they let non-gay men in? Because that's gonna be fun.
They don't care who shows up. It's just that like if you're deemed to be a nuisance, then or people don't like you, then they just don't work with you, and then eventually you leave. Because why would you want to be in a place where everyone doesn't like you and nobody's cooking for you or helping you do anything, and just everyone's looking at you weird? Like, so they handle that again totally voluntarily, to where you could go up there being like a neo-Nazi, like crazy, alt-right gay hating person, and they'll just all ignore you and not participate with you at all. And then what are you doing? You're sitting on the side of the mountain with no support, no community, no anything, and you're just gonna eventually fucking leave.
Yeah. So I guess I want to wrap this up with Stacia. What was your impression of this entire conversation?
Wow, big question.
I almost pulled a Michael Malice, especially because we've quoted him so many times and been like, so Stacia, what was your favorite part of this interview?
I think what was my impression?
I will send you a bunch of videos and literature and shit after this. Now you're doomed.
That'd be cool.
You're stuck with it now.
That'd be awesome. No, I am interested. I think we agree on a lot of the problems, and I think part of the difference is like personality, because I grew up in Japan that's like so collectivist, and it seems like there's something about this that is so individualistic, and like, yeah, so that's kind of hard for me to grasp.
I guess I'll have to send you a lot of collectivist anarchists, because there is individual and collectivist anarchism. So I'll have to send you a whole bunch of collectivist anarchism.
Yeah. So that's.
I think that's actually my least favorite critique of both libertarianism and anarchy, because I get it pretty often, and we do believe in like individual rights and individual responsibility, and the responsibility comes down to the individual and on yourself. You can't put it off on, like Magnus said multiple times, you can't put it off on government, which I think is to his earlier point, like a lot of the cultural problem is because we don't take care of the people around us because we think the government can. We don't take care of ourselves, like you talked about, making sure that the food we're buying is telling the truth on its packaging. We just assume that the FDA is doing that for us, so we don't actually care. We don't research these companies to make sure that they're actually doing what the FDA says they're doing.
Even though we have the internet and could just easily Google anything at any point, we have the supercomputers in our pocket, but we just don't.
But it only works. It only works if we actually do care about our community. Like it only works if we end up in a somewhat like semi-collectivist society with an individualist like responsibility on ourselves. We have to care about each other. We have to help each other. We have to like confront the bad people in our community ourselves and work together to make our community good, because we can't just rely on the state to do it.
I think I'm mostly hung up on that tank guy. I'm like, what a dick.
I'm kind of with you on that one, but also kind of love him at the same time.
I'm so chaotic. I'll have to send you a lot of Bookchin. I feel like Bookchin would be the perfect anarchist for you to look into, because he described himself as an ecologist. His whole thing about why he was interested in anarchy was saving the planet, which a lot of people view that as like a government fucking thing to do. But
exactly, I was thinking about that.
But everything he does and everything he addresses like anarchism through environmentalism. And actually, like one of the coolest things about the Rehova is they've actually is it called arization or something like that, where like desertification, something like that. He's actually taken like the community in Rehova off of Bookchin's work, is actually like reforested like parts of like Syria and shit like that, like de-deserted some parts of it, and like again like through anarchy. So I think that's good. And he considers himself a communal individualist, which people, interesting idea there. But I'll definitely send you a lot of cool stuff. And he's also my favorite. He's my favorite Marxist ever, because he actually spoke at the Libertarian Party National Convention once, and like had like super like cool. It wasn't Rothbard. It was some other person who was still alive in like the 80s. Like one of the famous libertarian people. He actually were like super good friends with each other and shit. So like.
Was
it Soul? Yeah.
I have to leave in a minute. Yep. But real fast. So I think the things that I'm most hung up on is how it would work internationally, like just all the interacting with other countries, how it would work environmentally, and just like I guess I've seen the government as like something that holds the corporations accountable, or should, right, if the game theory is working right. And so like how do we hold corporations accountable? And what else? And then also human nature, just like how do we deal with people who really disagree, living in close proximity. So I think those are the main things that I'm
the real quick zinger before you leave is we can't trust people, so we have to put people in power because we can't trust people. It's kind of cyclic logic, isn't it?
And I really love those three exact points, because like I've said like 6 times now, like you're where I've been for quite some time, or where it was for quite some time, to the point where you can go back only like maybe 20 episodes or so on my show and hear me say the exact words that the sole purpose of government is to enforce transparency within business. Like that's what I said for so long, which is almost exactly what you just said. So I'm like, I understand literally everything you're saying.
No,
I might disagree with you, but I don't think you're like fundamentally wrong. There is parts of personality in that. There is parts of stuff like that, but it's also like the ability for you to live in that world and me to live in my world is the most important thing to me. For you to have everything that you want and me to have everything I want and live separately, like without having guns pointed at each other. It's kind of like the end goal of it. And I actually like oppose the concept of like international anarchism, because there is a lot of anarchist elements that are like, well, the revolution will never end and we have to make every single country fall into anarchy and we have to make the entire world anarchistic. No, I don't agree with that. Like there will always be people that want exactly what we're living under now, and I don't want to.
Oh, not exactly.
Yeah. Well, no, I just mean like not in practice, but in principle. And I will never want to like force that upon them. It's just also just like at the same time, we live in a world where every single piece of land in the entire fucking planet has been claimed by an arbitrary border. And, people are like, oh, we'll go to Somalia. Somalia has a government. It might not be a very strong government, might not be anything, but you can't just go to Somalia. You can't just go like all that, So getting to a point in culture and understanding and respect where like someplace in the fucking world, I could go and just live the way I want to live I would be happy then, and I would never talk about it again, but just getting to that fucking point,
Yeah. Well, I think I agree with you on that. Yeah.
Welcome to the rabbit hole. I'm super excited though, because tomorrow I'm talking to probably my second favorite anarchist, second to Magnus, of course. But tomorrow I'm interviewing Carrie Wedler, and we're going to talk about a whole bunch of this stuff. And because she went from the left into anarchy, which is something like I really never dipped my toe very much into, like actual leftism. Like she was like a full-blown Obama is God kind of like Democrat, like loved Obama in 08.
Super neoliberal.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm very excited about that.
I'm on a fucking mission, because I got Olivia last night to talk about like maybe becoming an anarchist, and then I got I got Reed to become an anarchist. So like basically I'm collecting fucking scalps right now.
So it was literally just like you and Carrie are like single or double-handedly responsible, just the two of you, for Reed's descent into the anarchy over the last couple of months. I swear. A little bit of Scott Horton thrown in there, but I don't think he played nearly as much of a part as you and Carrie did
on the never-ending mission to take over the world so everyone leaves each other alone.
Well, with that, let's wrap up, guys. Thank you so much for watching. If you haven't already, like the video, subscribe to the channel. It's the other way. And leave a comment and tell us how much you hated this conversation, because I'm sure you all hated it for whatever reason, right?
Shout out to the idiot that was just going on a fucking anti-Semitic rant in the comments,
right?
Randomly for no fucking reason.
Fuck that guy. All the way till Sunday. Also, the guy that was like that called Stacia a social democrat, because that was fucking hilarious to me. That guy's in the comment section of every video I do, so that's always fun. But guys,
that's
again,
an interesting take.
Right. Thanks for watching. We'll catch you back here next week on Fightin' Friends.